This is the definitive history of every rejected Invincible variant. Kitchen Sink's Mark. Before the multiverse, there was a simple, heartfelt design. The initial concept for Mark's costume was a homemade fabric outfit, a far cry from the sleek, alien biopolymer he would eventually wear. This early design was so named Kitchen Sink Mark because, in the original plan, he was a distinct entity from a fully realized alternate dimension. The lore behind this universe was one of profound loss and absence. In this timeline, Nolan Grayson's internal conflict resolved itself not in a bloody confrontation on a mountain peak, but in a quiet, devastating departure. He left Earth before Mark's powers fully manifested, vanishing into the cosmos without ever revealing the truth of his Viltrumite heritage. This Mark was raised solely by his mother, Debbie, in a world where the shadow of a missing father was a constant, unanswered question. Without Nolan's influence, Mark's journey into superheroism was entirely self-directed and human-inspired. He had no knowledge of Viltrum, no understanding of the advanced technology that could create a near-indestructible uniform. His reference points were the comic books and movies of his youth. His first costume was crafted in his bedroom, with materials from a local fabric store. A thick yellow sweatshirt with a clumsily stitched logo, denim jeans for durability, and a simple black cloth mask to protect his identity. He was in every sense a grassroots hero. He fought local threats with sheer determination and raw power, but he was perpetually out of his depth, his costume fraying and tearing in battles that a proper Viltrumite suit would have withstood. He was a hero built from human spirit, throwing everything he had at his problems, including the proverbial kitchen sink. Robert Kirkman, however, had a grander visual narrative in mind. He saw Mark's graduation from this homemade outfit to the classic blue and yellow suit as a critical character moment, a visual representation of him embracing his alien lineage and stepping into a larger, more dangerous universe. The handmade costume was a perfect origin, but Kirkman wanted a design that felt inherently other, something that clearly was not of Earth. The kitchen sink Mark as a permanent alternate was shelved, yet its emotional core, the vulnerability and humanity of that cloth mask, was too powerful to discard. It was refined and reborn as my shy Mark, a variant who retained the simple mask as his defining trait. A permanent symbol of a Mark who never received the symbolic armor from his father and remained a more hesitant, grounded protector of his world, Prophet Mark. The next rejected variant emerged not from a character-driven divergence, but from a stylistic earthquake that shook the comics industry. This was Prophet Mark, a direct and intentional homage to the extreme aesthetics of the 1990s, specifically modeled after Rob Liefeld's iconic character, Prophet. To understand this variant, one must understand the era that birthed him. The early 90s were a time of radical experimentation in comics, characterized by hypermuscular, physically impossible anatomy, an abundance of weapons, pouches, and gritty anti-hero attitudes. Prophet was a quintessential figure of this movement, a time-displaced warrior clad in bandoliers, wielding a massive energy cannon and defined by a grim, uncompromising demeanor. The backstory conceived for Prophet Mark was a brutal one. In his reality, Earth was not threatened by a calculated imperialist force like the Viltrumites, but was instead locked in a perpetual, world-ending war against an alien onslaught from day one. This Mark did not have the luxury of a slow, coming-of-age story. His powers emerged on a battlefield. He was forged in fire and blood, never knowing a moment of peace. Without the guidance of a Cecil Stedman or the Global Defense Agency, this Mark became a soldier, his gear scavenged and customized from the alien tech of his foes. His suit was a patchwork of armored plates and, in the classic 90s style, an excessive number of pouches and straps. Most notably, he wielded a devastating, shoulder-mounted energy weapon, a tool of pure destruction that was a stark contrast to the main Mark's reliance on his own fists. This Mark was not a hopeful teenager. He was a hardened, cynical war veteran in a young man's body. His universe had no room for moral quandaries or diplomatic solutions. Every problem was a nail, and his giant cannon was the only hammer. The initial design was a perfect, almost parodic encapsulation of this ethos. However, when the concept art was completed, it became immediately clear that while it was a brilliant piece of meta-commentary, it was fundamentally at odds with the soul of Invincible. Kirkman's world, for all its violence, was built on character nuance, emotional depth, and a hero who, despite everything, struggled to retain his humanity. The extreme, weaponized look of Prophet Mark was simply too overpowering. It turned Mark into a generic action figure and clashed with the series' core vibe. The design was rejected, its core concept toned down into a more subdued, normal-looking Invincible variant, leaving the original, extreme incarnation as a fascinating relic of a road not taken. Mark. Some of the most interesting variants arise not from epic tragedies, but from simple misunderstandings. Such is the case of the Mart, a variant born from a literal interpretation of a creative note. The genesis was straightforward. Robert Kirkman, brainstorming new alternate reality ideas, suggested a version of Mark who wore a cap, intending a head covering, perhaps helmet-like piece of headgear. The artist, however, took the word at its most common face value, a baseball cap. The resulting concept art was as goofy as it was charming. It depicted Mark in a slightly modified version of his classic suit, but with a simple, everyday baseball cap perched on his head, the bill shading his eyes. The backstory imagined for him was equally low stakes. This Mark existed in a universe that was largely peaceful, almost mundane. Major world-ending threats were rare. He was less a global savior and more of a local, street-level hero, perhaps even holding down a part-time job. The cap was not a piece of tactical equipment. It was a part of his civilian identity, a comfort item he incorporated into his costume, making him feel more relatable and less like an intimidating alien god. The reaction from the creative team was immediate and unanimous. It looked too silly. In a series that dealt with themes of genocide, betrayal, and brutal consequence, a hero fighting a Flaxan invasion in a baseball cap undermined the dramatic tension and gravitas the creators worked hard to maintain. The design was deemed too unserious and was swiftly rejected. However, the core idea, a head-covering cap, still held merit. The challenge became how to execute it without the comedic effect. The concept was sent back to the drawing board, where it was reimagined, refined, and integrated into a more cohesive superhero design. The final product of this evolution was Capinvincible, a variant with a sleek, purpose-built cap that flowed seamlessly into the rest of his uniform, proving that even the most rejected ideas can, with the right perspective, evolve into something iconic. Zombie Mark, perhaps the most terrifying rejected variant, comes from one of the comic's most memorable arcs. When Angstrom Levy dumped the Prime Mark Grayson into a universe overrun by the undead, the natural assumption was that he would succumb. The initial concept for this tragic fate was a full transformation. Zombie Mark was designed as a classic shambling horror, pale, rotting flesh. He was a force of nature, a rabid animal in the shape of a hero, representing the ultimate loss of self. The backstory for this universe was one of absolute despair. Here, the zombie plague had won. There was no cure, no last-minute salvation. Every hero and villain had fallen. This Mark fought valiantly, but was inevitably overwhelmed, bitten, and infected. His Viltrumite biology did not grant him immunity. It only made him a stronger, faster, more durable zombie. He became the ultimate predator of his dead world, a perpetual monument to failure. Yet, as the creators developed this concept, they found it lacking in narrative depth. A mindless zombie Mark was certainly frightening, but he was not interesting. He could not speak, he could not scheme, and he could not truly torment the main Mark beyond being a physical threat. He was a monster, but not a character. He was rejected because the creators realized a far more compelling horror lay in a Mark who was still in there. This led to birth of Sinister Mark. In this accepted version, Mark's Viltrumite physiology allowed him to resist the plague's mind-erasing effects. He was turned, but he retained his intelligence, his memories, and his powers, all now twisted by a ravenous, undead hunger. Sinister Mark was cunning, manipulative, and terrifyingly persuasive. He wasn't just a zombie. He was a fallen hero who believed his monstrous state was a form of evolution, and he sought to save his prime counterpart by infecting him. This rejection was a masterclass in storytelling, trading a simple shock for a complex and psychologically devastating antagonist. Longhair Mark, the final significant rejected design, was one defined purely by style. This variant was conceived as a cooler, more rebellious version of the hero. The design featured Mark with flowing, unkempt hair and a standout, custom-designed jacket that was more in line with contemporary streetwear than a standard superhero uniform. The initial backstory painted him as a Mark who fully rejected the establishment. In his world, he may have had a falling out with the Global Defense Agency early on, viewing them as manipulative and controlling. He operated as a lone wolf. Oh, vigilante who answered to no one. His long hair and distinctive jacket serving as symbols of his defiance and independence from any system. This Mark was a rock star hero, operating on his own terms and according to his own moral code, which was often grayer than that of his prime counterpart. He was popular with the public, but a constant headache for authorities. Design was undeniably cool and resonated with a desire for a more edgy, autonomous Invincible. However, during the character design review, the same issue that plagued Prophet Mark emerged, albeit to a lesser degree. Final, accepted. Variant from this concept became a more normalized Invincible, a testament to the creator's commitment to a consistent and character-first visual identity, leaving the flashier long hair Mark as a reminder of a rebellious phase that was ultimately matured out of. Comment down your favorite rejected variant. Thanks for watching. Like the video, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell.